Welcome to the Applied Machine Learning for the Cybersecurity, the hands-on YouTube video tutorial series specially designed for the data and machine learning engineer to help them to solve the critical challenges in cybersecurity space by applying the modern machine learning and data engineering techniques. This is the second tutorial in section 2 and the seventh in this series of applied machine learning for cybersecurity. If you haven't seen the previous video, then I would recommend you to watch it first for having the better understanding about the series before continuing any further on this path. You can watch it either by clicking on the link given below in the description or by starting with the first video in the playlist. A quick recap on what we had covered so far in section 1 and in 2. In section 1, first we had a brief intro to the cybersecurity and learned about the different types of cyber threat and also discussed about the importance of machine learning in cybersecurity domain. Then we had set up our development environment using Docker, Conda, kubectl and IntelliJ. After that, we had created the Docker images and discussed about the best practices around the Docker development and applied them in practice in order to optimize the size of the Docker image. Next, we learned about the labeling process using the unsupervised learning via clustering technique and had also learned about the vectorization and dimensionality reduction technique for processing the data. After that, we have learned about the unsupervised versus supervised learning with the help of clustering versus classification example and looked into the different vectorization and normalization techniques for classification. Next, we had done few exercises on the malware classification where we had compared different classifier with the help of accuracy and other performance matrices, and at last we have talked about the importance of AutoML framework and discussed and compared few AutoML framework and finally did one exercise on malware classification using H2O AutoML. In section 2, first we had discussed about the Apache Spark and Kubernetes architecture and also looked into the advantages of leveraging Kubernetes as the Spark cluster manager. Next, we had developed sample Spark application on Kubernetes cluster using Kubernetes deployment object. In the current video, we will continue with our journey on the Spark on Kubernetes and we'll see how to implement end-to-end malware analysis pipeline using Spark and PySpark. We will implement the feature engineering part of the pipeline using the Spark on Scala and machine learning part using the PySpark on Python, and we'll also briefly talk about the Spark versus PySpark. So let's begin by importing IPython notebook into the Jupyter server and run the malware analysis pipeline. Before executing all these notebooks, let's try to understand that why we have broken these notebooks into the 3 steps and why we are calling it as the feature and ML engineering respectively. So in real life, when we implement the ML pipeline, it goes through the several stages and at each stage it consumes the input data either from the previous stage or from some external sources, and after processing the input data by applying some feature engineering or machine learning transformation, it stores it back to the reliable storage system from where it can be further processed and picked up by the subsequent stages. Here we are just trying to mimic the same behavior where we assuming feature engineering 1, feature engineering 2 and ML engineering are 3 stages of the pipeline, and these stages together will form our first end-to-end ML pipeline. Here we would be executing these notebooks manually, but when it comes to the real-time production system, each of these stages will get triggered automatically from the workflow management system, something like Airflow. So let's execute each cell in our first notebook and try to understand the code at the same time. In the first cell, we are stopping the Spark context so that we could relaunch it using our existing configuration. The next 2 cells is exactly same as what we had discussed into the last tutorial to import the required packages and initializing the Spark context. In the next cell, we are reading the whole directory from S3 and converting the data into RDD. In order to read and write the data in Spark, we can either use the RDD based API or data frame based API. Usually, we should use the data frame based API for reading the data, but above is the exceptional scenario where instead of CSV file, we are reading the whole raw data from the directory, which is still not supported by Spark data frame based API, and hence we have to use the RDD based API for the same. One important thing to note here, while reading the data, we are mentioning the number of partition we needed. In this case, we are giving it as the 500, and this is very important number, as number of optimal partition is the key behind the efficient feature and ML engineering pipeline. Here I am just specifying some random number, but in real life we may have to calculate the number of partitions based on the various factors, that is amount of data we would like to process, number of Spark executor we have, total memory and CPU of each executor, and total memory and CPU of the cluster. All these factors together decide the number of partitions we should mention while reading and writing the data, and we will look into it more detail when we will talk about the performance tuning and scaling of the Spark application in future chapters. In the next cell, we are creating the data frame from RDD and adding the new column called file name, which we would be using to make inner join with another data frame called file name underscore df containing the file name and label, and that we will create from the given CSV file. If you observe, the number of partition is not exactly same as what we have requested, and things which we need to keep in mind that we may ask the higher number of partition, but it up to the Spark to determine how much optimal and maximum it can give it to you depending on how it is splitting each partition and size of the each partition. Now let's merge these two data frame and let's see the output of this by using the inner join based on the file name criteria. The last step is to save the data frame back to the S3, and while doing that we are using the FARC file format along with the snappy compression, and this data will get used as the input for steps 2 while executing the feature engineering 2 notebook. Right combination of the file format and compression codec is the key for efficiently handling the large workload, as this combination greatly affects the network I/O operations. We will talk about this in great details when we will talk about the performance tuning for Spark application in the future chapter. This is the end of our first stage in the pipeline, which consists of the following step: importing the data from the external sources, that is in our case it's AWS S3, process and merge the data from the two separate sources using the data frame join operation, and finally reformat it into the suitable file format and save back it to the storage system using the appropriate compression codec. Now that we have executed all the cells, let's examine the output from our last operation in the S3. Now let's open the second feature engineering notebook and let's try to understand and execute it step by step. The first three cells are exactly same as what we had done in the previous notebook, so I am just executing it without much of the explanation. The next important cell is the fourth one, where we are reading the compressed Parquet data saved in the last step. Once the data is imported, I am repartitioning it to the very high number, and the reason for doing it that few feature engineering operations are quite memory intensive, and we need to make sure that we should not be running into out of memory issue, and hence increasing the number of partitions to have the less size for each partition. So let's execute the next cell and try to understand each operations and sequence of the operations that we are going to perform on the data, and those are: first is the tokenizer, which is the process of breaking the sentence into the word array. Second is the stop word remover, which helps us to remove the stop word as it is of no use for the analysis. Second is the stop word remover, which helps us to remove the stop words like and, the, comma, etc., as those are of no use for the future analysis. The third one is the word counter, which runs the word counter program on the data in the data frame. And the last one is the vector assembler. Vector assembler is the transformer that combines the given list of columns into the single vector column. It is useful for combining raw features and features generated by the different feature transformer into the single feature vector. We had already seen the same stuff while using the sklearn libraries with the Python. Here we are doing the same thing except at much higher scale with the distributed technologies like Spark. Once we run the natural language processing pipeline, we are storing back the extracted and transformed data back to the S3 for the next stage, which is our machine learning stage, which is going to be the malware classification using logistic regression. Just one thing to note, that the use of the coil is for writing the data, which is the same as repartition we had seen in previously, but the difference is that in coil we reuse the existing partition and do not create the new partitions like repartitioning. Hence, the amount of data shuffled between the nodes is less and the operation is much more efficient. Now that we have saved our transform data back to the S3, it's time to run the third stage of the pipeline, which is the actual machine learning stage. So let's open the ML engineering notebook, but before that, let's verify if we could retrieve the data from the saved output. And as you can see that we are able to retrieve the data from the S3 into the data frame and also able to display the same onto the console. So now let's open our third notebook for the ML engineering. Just for change, I have used the PySpark with Python instead of using the Spark with Scala. It's beyond doubt and proven that the Spark performs better with Scala than Python. But there are situations when you would be end up using the PySpark instead of the Spark with Scala, and the reason could be either you are using the third-party libraries which is not supported by the Scala, or you want to spend less time in reformatting the Python POC code to the Scala. At the end, it's an individual choice, and my advice is to use the Spark on Scala as much as possible while using the Spark application. Here, the first few cells are exactly same as what we had seen in the previous exercise, except the underlying language has been changed from Scala to Python. So I am just executing it without much of the explanation. The first important step is to load the Parquet data we have formatted in the last step. Next, we have to initialize the classifier, and here I am using the logistic regression, the simplest classification model to start with. Further, splitting the data into training and testing sets and running the logistic regression on the training data and running it again on the test data and calculating the accuracy, and at the end reporting the accuracy and error. All these operations are pretty much same as what we had learned using the scikit-learn and pandas, except this time it is at much higher scale using the Spark with the Scala. Once we have the model finalized, we can export the same back to the S3, and the actual application can load it and run the prediction in production pipeline. In the last section, we are trying to mimic the very same behavior and loading the ML model from S3 just like the real-time production application will do, and will run the prediction against the data. One thing to note, that the ML model written in the Python in PySpark can be used in the Spark application written in the other languages. And with this, I am concluding the current chapter, and I hope that you have understood that how end-to-end Apache Spark pipeline works. The next step is to build the actual Spark packages for the Spark and PySpark environment and running the same pipeline in the more formal manner. We are going to use the exact same step as we had seen in the above section, with the only difference that this time we would be using the actual Scala and py file instead of the notebook, and will build the Apache Spark packages before deployment. I would advise you to practice the current video, and please let me know if you face any issue while doing so. And at last, please leave your comment and let me know your feedback about the tutorial, and please subscribe the channel if you haven't. That way you can always get any upcoming video as soon as it's being released. Thank you and have a nice time.